Hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Piglet here once again, and I'm back for some more yet again for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to more Let's Play of Rabbids Go Home for the Nintendo Wii/Nintendo DS. So, last time that we've actually did manage to completely done with those 3 levels right there, and despite the fact that these 2 levels right there are a little bit shorter than the forms of the first level that we did done in Area 2, but I digress. So today for this episode, ladies and gentlemen, is the fact that we are going to be... I'm assuming we might actually hopefully wrap things up with the forms of Area 2 at this point. So even then though, we might as well able to go through, 3 levels once again. But even then, that's, yeah, we're about to get started right here. So let's start with this level right here. And it appears to be we're going to be grabbing the exact same item as previously, but the level's now named Bubble Bed Bonanza. So, yeah, you get the idea with this solution. So, basically, once again, as soon as we're able to actually grab that specific, this particular item right there, we're once again gonna have to utilize the triple jump mechanic. But I digress.
Doctor, Chief, what do you see? Not a freaking thing with this mask on. Huh? What was that? No! Attack! No, run away! Help me! Every man for himself!
Okay, so let's get started right there, but it informs about the fact that these 3 dogs are about to attack me. So even then, as usual, to stun them, and then hopefully you might as well able to actually grab them and hope for the best. However though, I will say though, that trying to able to actually capture a dog can get pretty difficult sometimes, especially noticeable with the brownie variations, just because, well, they can easily escape from that little stunning technique or anything else without recitable, just because of how the fact that, well, I do not know as well as what I expect. See, even then though, that, yeah, first of all, I just need to grab these little, trinkets here, or even in this case, for some stuff. And, yeah, everything else has all come together. See, even then though, that's pretty much it. Okay then, so let's move on, and, yeah, let's just go ahead and destroy this little, radio tech, and all that stuff. And, hopefully we can able to grab more stuff here and there, and, you get the drill for this solution. So, a few things I just want to explain about this, even though I've already, noticing that ever since in yesterday, is the fact that, today, that Spyro Reunited Trilogy for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One has been just recently released today on the 13th of November, which... I will admit though, even though I haven't really got the game in day 1 at the moment, because I might as well save that up until whenever I get it this weekend, because I think I might as well able to actually just give my opportunities to able to actually get a chance to able to actually first experience the HD counterparts of the forms of the Spyro trilogy. But of course I need to actually access to the Wi-Fi router on my PlayStation 4 at the moment first, before I'm able to actually jump into the forms of those 2 compilations, or in this case 3 compilation games, all in HD, but I digress. But I'm really looking forward to it though, especially I've already mentioned about that as a reviewer, but the forms of IGN gives it like an 8.5 out of 10, which, still looks very great. So, yeah, as far as I can say. And, another thing is kind of surprising ever since yesterday that I haven't sort of mentioned about this actually, is that, well, not only do we get ourselves the forms of more games announcing for the Nintendo Switch, which I do know there's actually one of them, and there's also 2 brand new films that has been recently came out on the teaser trailer departments. See, Fernando will go through games first, and then the films after that, as far as for my discussions goes. So, as for games departments, that, in the forms of back in 2014, that, they did recently announce the forms of Five Nights at Freddy's in the forms of the PC and Mac. Well, turns out that Five Nights at Freddy's is now going to be on Nintendo Switch. Well, to be more accurate, if I like to see for a second, the actual series of Five Nights at Freddy's, which I was like, Oh my god, the time has finally come again. But I don't know exactly when the actual series is gonna come out, but either way though, it might actually set something like elsewhere. But even then, yeah, as far as I can say how this will go. So, but I might be curious able to actually try these series out. Although I did manage to try those before in the forms of you know, the PC versions before, and jeez, it's so intense and intimidating at first. So, in fact, fundamentally though, when it gets to next year in 2019, this meant how the fact that it's going to be the 5 years anniversary of the forms of Five Nights at Freddy's existence, even for, you know, for pretty much any kinds of series as of now, like the forms of the first one, the second game, the third one, and the fourth one, and Sister's Location, and I think that's about it for the most part though, as far as the actual series are concerned. Even though I haven't really watched too much upon the forms of Five Nights at Freddy's as much, but at least I did manage to have ourselves a good time watching the actual Let's Plays of the forms of Five Nights at Freddy's series, especially notable with you know, Super Gaming Brothers. They did manage to done that in you know, in during the likes at the very end of the actual Let's Plays itself or something. But I digress. As for films department, that's well, one of them is actually kind of skeptical at first, and one I'm really looking forward to, and that is the forms of, well, let's start by the forms of the most exciting one of the bunch, and that will have to be the one and only Toy Story 4. Yes. The teaser trailer has finally been announced, and I was waiting for that for so long at this rate. Even though, granted, I was impatient for the most part though, until when the teaser trailer is up. But it's finally been happening, and I am super pumped for it, because it's been about, you know, 9 years since, well, almost a decade since, well, Toy Story 3. So, even then, I think the reason why they're trying to able to, like, push it back originally in the forms of 2019, just because of the celebration of the, well, let's just say 2 decades, or in this case, you know, 20 years ago for the Toy Story 2's release back in the day in 1999. So, my guess it might be said so. Even then, oh yeah. Before we continue on, I need to grab something from here, which I entirely missed that out. Oh, there's a cute little baby and one of those, prawns, by the way. And, could imagine of how the fact that me and Rarity managed to able to actually just to look after our baby. Well, she's not a baby anymore, but the forms of Manaphy. So even then though, that she's now fully grown up after the forms of like 6 years or so. But anyways though, enough about the actual like reality stuff, so let's go ahead and just, you know, continue moving on, and we have found the forms of the exact same item. So, yeah, you get the idea. So, and consecutively, that I'm presuming that we might actually come towards the forms of that, you know, enemy encounters. Being more accurately, the humor encounters. So, but even then though, we have to defeat only 3 of them, and that's pretty mean, because you just trying to able to strike me at first glance, but either way, how rude. Anyway, yeah, I'm really looking forward to Toy Story 4. It's going to be on its way. In fact, it might be not that long until whenever we can now finally wait for it for several months for this point later. But either way, though, still hyped for it, and can't wait to see the actual gang up back. Ever since, you know, Toy Story 3 ended. So, you know, you get the idea. And, also, they did actually announce there's going to be a official trailer, which I was a bit too skeptical at first, just because, well, the movie I was going to talk about is the forms of not the forms of Pokemon The Power of Us, because obviously that's going to come out during this month, and during the likes of the cinemas, but also during the likes of you know, the film I was going to talk about is the, something Pokemon related, but in forms of Pokemon Detective Pikachu, the movie, which is based off from the 3DS game for the 3DS. And let me tell you, it almost feels exactly like Sonic 06 to me. Like, realistic people settings and also cartoon characters bring to life with a little bit of a more realistic visual design. And I don't know, I'm a little bit alright with such, but it's just how weird the characters look, even by the forms of the Pokemon standards. Because the thing is, I'm more used to with the forms of an anime type of Pokemon films like this, but apparently that WB is now finally making a new Pokemon film, at least ever since then. And also, same applies by the forms of the Pokemon Company and stuff like that. But Legendary Studios logo, and I was like, oh, I wonder if that's gonna be represented for. I wonder, but either way, that as far as I've noticed, is the fact that obviously the Ryan Dan Rons is actually going to be performing Detective Pikachu himself. You know, because kind of like how he did in the forms of Deadpool 1 and 2, that he did manage to perform as the forms of Deadpool himself. So, might be curious, able to actually just see how he act out from that, which I think is actually a pretty good choice as far as the actual voice are concerned. And on the other hand, though, the actual companion buddy forms of Detective Pikachu is going to be, as far as the actors and stuff like that, it might actually be, what's that actor's name? I totally forgot. It could be something related to Smith, buddy forms of you know, I think it's called Justice Smith. I'm presuming that's what his name was, which appears to be Will Smith's brother. So, at least as far as I'm right or wrong about it, but even then, either way. And it seems the movie itself is fine enough, but it's just, I can't help but notice how the fact that how different the Pokemon do look. Even by the forms of how the fact they're trying to able to actually just you know, based off from pretty much everything. Like, for instance, that they did manage to done Wreck-It Ralph just fine because of the Disney animator. And especially noticeable by the forms of, like, what's another film that is actually based off from video games and stuff? Well, I'm not exactly a big fan of the forms of the Angry Birds movie, and I'm not looking forward until the sequel's gonna come, which, to be honest, that I wasn't really too thrilled about it, to be honest. And also by the forms of Secret Life of Pets 2, which I personally am probably pass on that as well, just because I found the first film to be kind of generic, and plus there's a typical stereotypes to me, though, even especially noticeable, though it's, you know, still feels a bit significantly similar to Toy Story, except it's just pets instead of, you know, the talking toys. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned with this. But anyway, I guess there's not much else I can really say. There's not much else I can really talk about for this point, other than that, I'm probably not gonna do a rant about the forms of how different the actual Pokemon itself look in the Detective Pikachu movie. I mean, surely Pikachu is fine, but I'm really uncomfortable how the fact that he now got himself his fur this time, which, unlike it towards his predecessors in the forms of the Pokemon anime, normally that Pikachu, he's actually just, well, just managed to able to actually just don't get any furs of it whatsoever. But, well, at least Shaman, the forms of the land form in Pokemon the Movie 11 does have fur, which, or in this case, well, just fur in general, especially with the actual flowers. Well, I haven't really watched upon the forms of Pokemon movies these days, other than the fact that with the retrospective of, you know, Pokemon the Movie 21, including the upcoming the Movie 22, but we'll get into more details onto that once it's like 2019's news related. So, alright, let's see how much. Oh, I was 7 off by getting a maximum amount. Oh well, no big deal. But at least I did try. So anyways, let's go back to the toilet we go. Almost like flushed away. Well, at least except the fact that, how can anyone else or any rabbits for this matter, did manage to able to actually traverse by the forms of the actual sewers? Even with, like, you know, you get the idea. Anyway, so I believe we might as well able to have enough time to do the next level, Super Racket in the Market. So this means we have to mess around with the forms of supermarkets. And just like the forms of the very first level of the game, by the forms of shop until you drop, I'm presuming we need to grab this thing again, Super Nintendo, except with a different level layout. Okay, so here we are in the forms of that specific rooftops, and now we need to make our way from here. So, naturally speaking of such that, you know, the majority of the levels themselves, especially with the actual time length, can go like somewhere roughly around over 10 minutes sometimes, because obviously if you really want to get every single like stuff and collectibles, then by all means you can do that. But if you really want to do the main campaign of the game while skipping over some of these stuff, then, you know, you get the idea with the solution, so, you know.
Okie dokie.
Okay, so we have to deal with these two dogs, which, one thing I forgot to mention is the fact that these dogs almost reminds me of the forms of, well, like, Rover Dangerfield, except the fact that it doesn't have his red tie on to attach to it. So even then, no, that, although it almost feels kind of similar to that, well, not exactly precisely, but I digress. Alright, so we got ourselves this particular human suit again, but even then, just like before, we need to simply just... How dare you trying to able to actually just body slam right into me? Jeez, how very ludicrous you are. Anyway though, so now we can able to move on, but before we do that, one thing is kind of cool about this level, as you can see, is the fact that we can actually just skimming the forms of the swimming pool, apparently, with the forms of the trolley's momentum, which, it feels a bit odd at first, but it's kind of cool looking, because even then, I don't think you can able to actually drown in this particular swimming pool, I don't think, but I can assure to you by the fact of the matter is, though, is that you would able to actually just use the special speed boost will able to actually become in handy. Even if you really don't want to get drowned for that particular stuff in mind, then you would potentially try to able to use that, so yeah. So yeah, aside from that, again, I'm really low on ideas about the all kinds of news related stuff other than, well, you know, 2 brand new film trailers has been up by the forms of the most exciting Toy Story 4, and especially noticeable with, to me though, you know, pretty skeptical, you know, Detective Pikachu movie, which, again, because I just feel like, well, again, I stressed that enough before, that I don't personally find Detective Pikachu's design to be that bad, but it just feels kind of unnecessary to me to able to add in fur into it. And also by the forms of how the fact that, well, mostly Pokemon's look a bit different, but I really can't guarantee about the fact that how ridiculously different they are, even by the forms of like somewhat similar to Sonic 06. Well, I don't know why I keep on comparing the Detective Pikachu movie, and even especially noticeable by the forms of the Sonic fan film, by the forms of Blue Core Studios, the one that time that, you know, back in 2012, back in the day, that they did manage to able to actually make a shoddy product, even by the forms of like, you know, just for a Sonic mini movie and stuff, like horrendous CGI. And especially noticeable with the forms of, you know, at the very end of the forms of Sonic fan film, in the forms of, you know, Blue Core Studios, for some reason, they just seems to be, is it really necessary to able to let Knuckles to have, fingers on his gloves at the very end of the film? And I was like, ugh. Well, at least in Sonic Boom, they did that alright, but either way though, that's what cartoons are for, especially. Even take Sonic Boom TV series any day, with the forms of how the fact that, well, they did have Roger Craig Smith in it, so. But I'm very curious to able to actually just to know about the forms of the Sonic the Hedgehog the movie was going to be on its way until next year as well. but I'm really concerned about the fact that the actual voice actor is going to be different for Sonic, because I don't know if he's going to be able to be replaced by that, or is it completely just the exact same thing for, Roger Craig Smith sometimes, which still we'll find out until the forms of, again, 2019 news related, so, but we're not going to discuss anything about it now, so let's go dive right in. And here we are in the shopping mall, and all we have to do is basically we need to go after this particular object here. But before we do this, however, though, let's go ahead and explore the forms of the actual supermarket of all things, to able to, as you might have guessed it, to able to grab even more stuff. So, and also just mess around with the forms of a lot of townspeople around here, even by the forms of getting more stuff here and there as well. So, yeah, that's to be expected at this point, so... Now, you've already seen this scene before in the forms of, the previous level, but I probably should be able to talk over for this again, because I'm pretty sure this might actually only happens whenever you see that scene again, whenever you're trying to turn off the game and turn it back on again or something like that, but I don't know exactly for sure about that, but again, it's kind of cool to be able to see. Keep on smacking the forms of the doll's head, or in this case, the doll's face, and then, well, that's what Rabbids are for, because even then, this is before the minions exist in the forms of, not only for the forms of the Despicable Me film series, but it's also by the forms of, the Minions film series, by the forms of the first one, and I believe they're going to be doing the second, Minions film until whenever it gets to 2020. But, I digress. Now, apart from the forms of the Illumination Picture Studios, is that, they're going to be trying to be making an animated, Super Mario Bros. Movie, and during the likes of at some point in 2022, which I know for the fact that it's going to be like 4 years' time, which it might take a long time, though, to able to actually just to deal with that stuff. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be on the exact same year as the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics. But I think the reason why they're trying to able to put the forms of the Super Mario Bros. Animated movie in the forms of entering in 2022, just because if they got enough some time before, Super Nintendo World is going to be revealed, any forms of during the likes of in 2023, which is about 5 years time. So even then, that's still got ages to go though before that's been happening, as far as I'm most likely concerned with this. So anyway, though, let's go ahead and just drift along very, very quickly, especially for this point right there. Even though that it seems entirely missing on something, like for instance some more items by the forms of townspeoples, especially. And especially noticeable with the forms of those little spinning objects, which you can also try and able to grab through as well. So that way you could potentially try and able to see how this will go. So yeah, I guess there's not much else I can really say about this point today for this point, folks, other than, well, that's about it as far as today's news standpoints. Even then, though, that's well, looking forward for the forms of next year's films, logic-wise, other than, well, the forms of not only Toy Story 4, but it's also by the forms of the live-action versions of the forms of Dumbo, and especially Aladdin, and even especially noticeable for the forms of The Lion King. So even then, though, that should be pretty exciting. So, and I think that's about it. So anyways, let's bust for these little cardboard boxes, and speaking of such, Santa Claus! Let's go ahead and just get, oh wow, that's a crap ton of stuff that you got out from, for the second hit. Anyways, before we do this, before we get up to the escalator, we need to see what's beyond for these little bushes. In fact, more birds! Birds! Birds, 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 birds. Anyway. Also, there's some tons of, not so much tons, but just 2 dogs in general that we can able to stun them. So, there we go. And let's go for these escalators one by one. Even though it could potentially try to able to go after that little radio box looking object, but I might as well able to skip that for now. So even then, though, that I would appreciate it if I was trying to able to actually go for that, but I just don't know why I've entirely skipped over that, other than I wasn't clearly paying attention to the actual visual cue or something. But anyway, Of course, what you know, we got ourselves even more human encounters along the way, so at the moment we can only defeat just only one of them. But that doesn't end off here, because you can tell there's going to be some more here, so this means that we need to defeat 2 of them this time. Because as soon as you think that the actual battle sequence is over, meaning how the fact that whenever the camera is able to, you know, just trying to focusing on the actual human's suit will be destroyed, this means you can now able to actually just continuing. So that's about it, and self-explanatory for the most part, so just want to point things out. Alright, so for the most part, we're almost nearly towards the end of this level, kind of thing about it, other than, you know, more stuff to collect, in addition to the forms of, like, just double check on things, and so let's just simply just hit back here and just see if what any kind of stuff that we've missed, and looks like so far we haven't missed any. So thankfully though, these little tables right from the slant, they can be acted out as checkpoints, or in this case, no, not so much checkpoints, but just shortcuts in general. So anyways, be very careful with these cactuses here, and I believe that we're pretty much nearly at the end, which I'm sure enough that way we can able to actually grab that item over there. But before we do that though, on the other hand though, we'll go ahead and just get even more stuff here and there, and of course we can able to actually just grab that, and especially this as well, and we'll go down here and grab even more pile of junk, and hopefully we'll able to actually hope for the best to, well, just become, you know, dominated for the most part for the entirety of the game. And so far, so good. We haven't exactly died at the game yet. Well, it wasn't until when we get to the later levels, and I think you've already seen this scene already, ever since you formed to the very first level in the game. So, expecting so that way that if you manage to grab her on this little particular object here, then the level's instantly over. And for whatever reason, it usually takes place in the forms of like an out of nowhere toilet room or something, but in forms of that, well, you know. And I was off by about, let's just say 36, so I was off by that, but that's okay, because again, that doesn't really matter for me for the most part. So yeah, that's about it, but in forms of well, the actual level itself. But then again, that sometimes every kind of levels these days, they're always trying to able to take a little bit of a long time to able to complete them, but that's just how you think it would be. Alright, so that's it for that, and I believe we're now moving on to the forms of the final level in Area 2. Well, it's not so much for level, because as you can see, that the numbers doesn't indicate by the forms of tons of stuff you have to collect, because we might actually counter something a little bit more differently than the forms of a traditional level, because, well, you'll see why, since we're able to actually get to this next screen. Well, after this loading times is done, so there we go. So basically, in this one is the fact that we need to accept the Rabbids challenge until you're able to actually just try to beat the highest score as possible, and then you would able to get your health parts. Because yes, in order to actually get health parts in this game, in this case, buddy forms of the next light bulb of your health bar, basically you have to do with buddy forms of the specific minigame challenges. So even then though, like take this for instance, that we need to follow the actual like control commands by the forms of the actual like you know, the actual minigame itself, and then if you manage to able to let your Rabbid smack all over the place inside your Wii Remote controller, and then the more you do it, then the more points you're able to get. So let's see how much I got. And in fact, that the amount of points you need to get up to is definitely 10, so I've reached to 30. So this means that since we've already done with that, oh, can I? Okay, I'm thinking, nah, I might as well unpause that. And that way, if you manage to accomplish the actual minigame, then you would able to actually get yourselves a nice little extension of your bulbs. So even then, now we've got 4 health. So now let's leave, and we are essentially done with everything in Area 2. So this, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to be approaching onto the forms of in Area 3. So this means that the levels can get pretty much rampant, and especially noticeable how the fact that there's going to be a lot of things to go through. So anyways though, and this actually shows us to the next area. So anyways though, we got the endings off at this point right there. So join me next time on Let's Play Rabbids Go Home, is that we are about to get things started off Area 3. So see you guys next time. Later fellas.